October 14th, 2009. The annual Hollow Creek Carnival was louder than ever. Music echoed across the small town. Children ran between glowing rides. Families filled the streets until midnight. And somewhere in the middle of that noise, 8-year-old Emily Carter disappeared forever. At least that is what everyone believed. Emily arrived at the carnival with her parents and older brother Mason. She wore a yellow jacket covered in tiny stars. Her mother later told police Emily refused to take it off because she believed it was lucky. At 9:17 p.m., security cameras captured Emily holding cotton candy beside the Ferris wheel. That was the last confirmed sighting of her alive. 20 minutes later, Mason realized she was gone. At first, nobody panicked. The carnival was crowded. Children wandered constantly. Her parents searched every ride, every game booth, every restroom. But Emily never answered. Then someone found her bicycle near the forest road behind the carnival grounds. The front wheel was still spinning slowly. Police arrived within minutes. Search teams flooded the woods with flashlights. Volunteers formed long lines through the trees. Dogs tracked Emily's scent for almost half a mile. Then suddenly, the scent vanished completely, as if she had disappeared into thin air. Detective Alan Pierce led the investigation that night. He had worked missing child cases before. But something about this one felt wrong immediately. There were no signs of struggle, no screams, no witnesses, nothing. Only one strange detail disturbed him. A group of volunteers discovered footprints deep in the mud behind the carnival, small footprints beside much larger ones. The child's prints stopped suddenly near the road, but the larger prints continued alone into darkness. Police believed someone carried Emily away. The story exploded across the country within days. News vans surrounded Hollow Creek. Emily's smiling school photo appeared everywhere. On television, newspapers, billboards. People became obsessed with the mystery. Tips flooded the police station day and night. Most were useless. Some were disturbing. A man claimed Emily had been taken by a traveling cult. Another swore he saw her inside a black van heading north. None of the stories matched. Weeks passed, then months. The carnival closed permanently after the investigation. Parents stopped letting children walk alone. Businesses shut down early at night. Fear spread through Hollow Creek like poison. But the worst damage happened inside the Carter family. Emily's mother stopped sleeping. Her father stopped speaking during dinner, and Mason blamed himself every single day. Because the last thing Emily ever said to him was simple. "Wait here, I'll be right back." 10 years passed after that night. No body was ever found, no suspect was arrested, and eventually, people stopped believing Emily Carter would ever return. The Carter house became silent after Emily disappeared. Not the peaceful kind of silence, the heavy kind, the kind that made every room feel empty. Emily's bedroom stayed untouched for years. Her toys remained exactly where she left them. Her yellow jacket still hung beside the closet door. Her mother, Sarah Carter, refused to move anything. She believed Emily would come home one day. At first, the town supported the family. Neighbors brought food every week. Volunteers organized searches through nearby forests and abandoned buildings. Church groups held candlelight vigils every month. But as years passed, people slowly moved on. The town wanted the nightmare to end. The Carters could not. Sarah became obsessed with finding clues police missed. She spent entire nights studying online forums and missing person cases. Every unknown phone call made her panic. Every knock at the door made her run downstairs. Her husband, Daniel, handled the grief differently. He buried himself in work. He stopped talking about Emily completely. Sometimes weeks passed without him mentioning her name once. The distance between him and Sarah grew larger every year. Then there was Mason, Emily's older brother. He was 13 the night she vanished. People constantly asked him the same question. "How did you lose your sister?" The guilt followed him everywhere, at school, at home, even in dreams. By 17, Mason started getting into fights. Anyone who joked about Emily disappeared with a broken nose. Police picked him up more than once. Detective Alan Pierce always brought him home personally. Pierce understood the boy's anger. Because he blamed himself too, the case haunted him for years. Every failed lead felt personal, and there were many leads. One suspect was a traveling carnival worker named Victor Hale. He vanished 2 days after Emily disappeared. Police tracked him across 3 states. But when they finally found him, he was already dead from an overdose inside a motel room. Another suspect was a local hunter living near the forest. Officers discovered hundreds of disturbing photographs inside his cabin, but none connected directly to Emily. The case collapsed again. Rumors slowly infected Hollow Creek. Some believed Emily was dead. Others believed someone powerful protected the kidnapper. One rumor refused to disappear. People whispered that somebody in town knew exactly what happened that night. An old woman claimed she saw a black van parked behind the carnival every year afterward. A mechanic swore he repaired the same van months before Emily vanished. But every story ended the same way. No proof, no answers. Then something strange happened during the 8th year of the investigation. Sarah Carter received a plain white envelope in her mailbox. No address, no stamp. Inside was a single photograph. The image showed a dark forest at night. Nothing else. At first it looked meaningless. Then Sarah noticed something hidden near the trees. A small yellow shape, the same shade as Emily's jacket. Police analyzed the photo for weeks. They could not confirm if it was Emily. But Detective Pierce noticed another detail. In the corner of the photograph was a faded symbol scratched onto a wooden post. A strange circle with 3 lines through the middle. Nobody recognized it. Not yet. But years later, that symbol would return again. And when it did, everything about Emily's disappearance would change forever. 1 week after the photograph arrived, Detective Alan Pierce reopened the investigation officially. Most officers believed it was pointless. 10 years without answers usually meant only one thing. But Pierce could not ignore the symbol in the corner of the image. Something about it felt deliberate, like a message left behind. He started reviewing old witness statements again. Thousands of pages filled the evidence room. Most reports were useless tips from frightened people. But one name suddenly caught his attention. Martin Doyle, a gas station employee working near the highway outside Hollow Creek. Back in 2009, Martin claimed he saw a little girl matching Emily's description sitting inside a black van hours after the carnival ended. At the time, police doubted him. His story kept changing during interviews. But Pierce noticed something strange now. Martin originally mentioned a symbol painted on the van door, a circle with 3 lines through the middle, the exact same symbol from the photograph. Pierce drove to Martin's gas station immediately. The old station barely survived anymore. Half the lights outside were broken. The road behind it disappeared into endless forest. Martin looked nervous the moment Pierce arrived. Older now, thinner. His hands shook while pouring coffee. Before Pierce even asked questions, Martin whispered something strange. "I knew you'd come back eventually." Pierce showed him the photograph. Martin's face turned pale instantly. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he locked the station doors. He admitted he lied years ago. He had seen more than a little girl in a van. He saw 2 men arguing beside the highway that night. One opened the van door. Martin briefly saw Emily inside, alive, crying silently. Pierce demanded descriptions of the men, but Martin hesitated. Fear filled his eyes. He claimed one of the men noticed him watching. The next morning, someone called his house. A calm voice told him to stay quiet if he wanted to live. The threats continued for weeks afterward. Martin became terrified. So terrified that he changed parts of his statement during police interviews. Pierce pushed harder. Who were the men? Martin finally agreed to reveal everything, but not at the gas station. He told Pierce to return after closing time. "Somebody watches that road," he whispered. "You don't understand what these people are." That night, a violent storm rolled across Hollow Creek. Rain hammered the empty roads. Pierce arrived at the station just after midnight. Police cars already surrounded the building. An ambulance sat outside, with flashing lights cutting through the rain. Martin Doyle was dead. Officials claimed he slipped while repairing a power box behind the station. Electrocution, instant death. Most officers accepted it immediately. Pierce did not, because Martin's body was found 20 feet away from the power box, and scratched into the wet dirt beside him was the same strange symbol again. The circle, 3 lines, perfectly drawn. Pierce ordered a deeper investigation, but by morning, evidence had already disappeared. Rain washed most of the symbol away. Security cameras at the station mysteriously stopped recording 1 hour before Martin died. Then another detail surfaced. Phone records showed Martin received 7 calls before his death, all from blocked numbers. The final call lasted exactly 43 seconds. Nobody could trace it. Pierce realized something horrifying then. Someone had been protecting this secret for 10 years, and anyone who came close to the truth ended up dead. Meanwhile, across town, Sarah Carter noticed something outside her bedroom window late that same night. A black van parked briefly across the street. Its headlights remained off. It stayed there for almost 2 minutes, then slowly drove away into darkness. But before it disappeared, Sarah saw something painted faintly on the side door. A circle, with 3 lines through the middle. Martin Doyle's death terrified the entire town. News reporters returned to Hollow Creek within hours. People gathered outside the gas station, placing flowers beside the police tape. Most believed it was an accident. Detective Alan Pierce knew better. Someone was cleaning up loose ends, and they were getting bolder. Pierce created a private board inside his office. Every clue connected to Emily's case covered the wall. Photographs, maps, witness statements, and at the center of everything, the strange symbol, circle, 3 lines. He needed to know what it meant. That answer arrived from an unexpected place. 3 local teenagers contacted police after seeing news reports about Martin's death. They claimed they had seen the symbol before, deep inside the forest outside Hollow Creek. The teenagers often explored abandoned places online for video content. 1 year earlier, they discovered an old cabin hidden miles beyond the logging trails. The symbol was carved across the front door. Pierce immediately drove them into the woods. Rain from the previous night turned the trails into thick mud. The deeper they traveled, the quieter the forest became. No birds, no insects, only wind moving through dead trees. After nearly an hour, they found the cabin. It looked forgotten by time. Rotting wood covered in moss, broken windows, a rusted chain hanging from the porch ceiling. The symbol was still visible above the entrance. Pierce entered first with his flashlight raised. Dust covered everything inside, but one room stopped him cold. Children's drawings covered the walls completely. Hundreds of them, crayon sketches of forests. Dark figures, black vans. Some drawings showed crying children standing beside underground rooms. Others showed stars painted across yellow jackets. Pierce's heart started pounding. One drawing near the corner carried a shaky signature, Emily. For the first time in 10 years, Pierce believed Emily truly survived after the kidnapping. Then another officer discovered something hidden beneath loose floorboards. Several cassette tapes wrapped carefully in plastic. Most were damaged by moisture, but one still worked. They played it inside the patrol car. At first, only static filled the tape. Then a child's voice whispered softly, "Please let me go home." The recording cut off immediately afterward. Nobody in the car spoke for several seconds. Sarah Carter later heard the tape herself. She collapsed crying before it finished. She recognized Emily's voice instantly. Police prepared a full forensic search of the cabin the next morning. But when officers returned at sunrise, the cabin was gone, burned completely to the ground overnight. Smoke still rose from the ruins. Investigators found traces of gasoline everywhere. Whoever started the fire wanted every piece of evidence destroyed. But they missed one thing. Underneath burned debris, Pierce recovered a metal box untouched by flames. Inside was a faded photograph. The image showed 5 children standing in front of the cabin years earlier. One of them was clearly Emily. The others remained unidentified. But the most disturbing part stood behind them. A tall man wearing a dark coat. His face was hidden completely in shadow, and painted on the cabin wall beside him was the symbol again, circle, 3 lines. Pierce stared at the photograph for hours, because this was no random kidnapping anymore. Emily had not been alone. There were other children, other victims, and somewhere out there, the man in the photograph might still be watching them all. 10 years after Emily Carter vanished, she walked back into Hollow Creek during a thunderstorm. It happened just after midnight. Rain flooded the empty streets. Most people were asleep when the girl appeared near the old highway bridge. A truck driver spotted her first. She wore dirty clothes soaked from the rain, no shoes, long dark hair hanging over her face. At first he thought she was injured. Then he looked closer and nearly drove off the road. The girl looked exactly like Emily Carter, older now, but unmistakably her. Police arrived within minutes. Officers wrapped her in blankets and brought her to the station. She never resisted, never cried, never spoke, not one word. Detective Alan Pierce rushed to the station after receiving the call. When he entered the interview room, he froze completely. The woman sitting beneath the flickering light had Emily's eyes. The same small scar near her eyebrow from childhood. The same nervous habit of twisting her fingers together. Pierce could barely breathe. Emily? No response. She simply stared at the table silently. Doctors examined her for hours. Malnourished, severe dehydration, old scars across both wrists. But DNA confirmed the impossible by sunrise. The silent young woman was Emily Carter, alive after 10 years. News spread across Hollow Creek before morning ended. Crowds gathered outside the hospital immediately. Some people cried openly. Others looked terrified. Because if Emily survived, then somebody kept her hidden all those years. Sarah Carter arrived at the hospital shaking uncontrollably. The moment she saw Emily, she collapsed into tears. She hugged her daughter desperately. Emily did not hug her back. She barely reacted at all. Her expression remained empty, emotionless, like somebody returning from another world. Daniel Carter stood silently near the doorway, unable to move. Mason arrived last, now 23 years old. The moment Emily looked at him, her breathing changed suddenly. For 1 second, fear flashed across her face. Then it disappeared again. Mason noticed it immediately. So did Pierce. Doctors believed Emily suffered extreme psychological trauma, possibly years of abuse and isolation. They warned police not to pressure her too quickly. But Pierce needed answers, because someone dangerous was still free. The first official interview lasted only 12 minutes. Emily sat silently while detectives asked simple questions. Do you know where you are? Do you remember what happened? Can you tell us who took you? Nothing, not a single word. Then Detective Pierce placed the old cabin photograph on the table. Emily's entire body stiffened instantly. Her eyes locked onto the shadowed man standing behind the children. For the first time, real terror appeared on her face. She pushed herself violently away from the table, breathing harder, almost panicking. Then she pointed toward the symbol painted on the wall in the photograph. Circle, 3 lines. Her hand trembled uncontrollably. Pierce carefully asked one question. What does this symbol mean? Emily suddenly grabbed the photograph and tore it apart. Then she whispered something so quietly nobody understood at first. One sentence, barely audible. He watches everything. Before detectives could ask another question, the hospital lights shut off completely. Darkness swallowed the room. Outside, thunder exploded across Hollow Creek, and somewhere beyond the hospital parking lot, a black van sat motionless in the rain. Backup generators restored power to the hospital within seconds. By the time officers searched the parking lot, the black van was gone. Detective Alan Pierce ordered patrol units across Hollow Creek to search every highway exit. Nothing was found. No witnesses. No license plate. Just another shadow disappearing into the night. Meanwhile, Emily remained inside a secured hospital room under constant watch. Doctors warned her condition was unstable. She barely slept, barely ate, and every sudden sound made her flinch violently. Sometimes nurses heard her whispering alone at night. Not conversations, just numbers repeated over and over again. 3, 7, 12. Nobody understood what they meant. Pierce continued interviewing her carefully each day. Most sessions ended in silence. But Emily reacted strongly to certain words. Forest, cabin, basement, van. Each one triggered fear immediately. Then something stranger began happening. Emily started drawing symbols constantly, on napkins, notebook pages, even hospital walls. Circle, 3 lines, again and again. Sometimes surrounded by maps and strange patterns, Pierce collected every drawing for analysis. One page caught his attention immediately. Emily had drawn the symbol beside a rough sketch of Hollow Creek. A red X appeared near the edge of town beside the abandoned rail tunnels. Pierce took officers there the same night. The tunnels had been closed for years after structural collapses. Homeless people occasionally used them for shelter. But deep inside one tunnel, police discovered something hidden behind wooden boards. A small underground room. Inside were blankets, food cans, children's books, and dozens of photographs covering the walls. Every photograph showed Emily at different ages, sleeping, eating, walking outside cabins. Someone had monitored her for years. One image disturbed Pierce more than the others. It showed Emily standing beside another child, a young boy around 6 years old. His face was scratched out completely. Officers searched the room for fingerprints. Most evidence was too old or damaged, but they found one fresh detail: a cigarette still burning slowly in the corner. Whoever used the room had left minutes earlier. Pierce realized they were being watched in real time. Back at the hospital, Emily's behavior grew worse. A nurse accidentally mentioned the forest during dinner. Emily suddenly smashed the plate against the wall, screaming silently. No words came out, only terror. Doctors sedated her afterward. While cleaning the room later that night, a nurse found something hidden beneath Emily's mattress. Pages torn from a notebook. Each page contained names written repeatedly. Some belonged to missing children from nearby states. Others matched unsolved disappearances dating back 20 years. And at the bottom of the final page, one name was circled heavily: Alan Pierce. Pierce stared at the page for a long time. Then he noticed something written underneath his name. A sentence Emily had carved deeply into the paper. He was there the first night. Pierce felt cold instantly, because he had never told Emily something important. On the night she disappeared, Detective Alan Pierce briefly saw the black van himself. And for 10 years, he kept that secret buried. Detective Alan Pierce had hidden the truth for 10 years. The memory never left him, not even for one night. Hours after Emily disappeared in 2009, Pierce spotted a black van parked near the forest road outside Hollow Creek. Its headlights were off. The vehicle sat motionless between the trees. Pierce approached carefully on foot. But before he reached it, the engine started suddenly. The van sped into the darkness before he could see the driver clearly. At the time, Pierce never reported the sighting officially. He convinced himself it meant nothing. The investigation already lacked evidence. He feared adding uncertain details would damage the case further. But now Emily's words haunted him. He was there the first night. Did she mean Pierce or someone else entirely? Before he could process it further, another breakthrough arrived. An evidence technician recovered old carnival security footage previously believed destroyed. The tapes were found inside storage boxes scheduled for disposal. Most recordings were damaged badly, hours of static and missing frames, but one camera near the carnival exit still worked partially. Pierce and his team watched the footage repeatedly inside the station. At 9:32 p.m., Emily appeared briefly near the edge of the parking lot. She looked frightened, looking behind her constantly. Then a black van entered the frame slowly. The site's door opened. A figure stepped out wearing a dark coat. The image quality was terrible. The face remained impossible to identify, but the symbol was visible clearly on the van door. Circle, 3 lines. Then something horrifying happened in the footage. Emily did not run away. She walked toward the van willingly, as if she recognized the person inside. The video ended seconds later. Nobody in the room spoke afterward. Pierce immediately ordered the van tracked through old highway cameras. After days of searching, investigators finally recovered one useful image: a partial license plate. The registration belonged to a man named Leonard Vale, 38 years old, former mechanic, arrested twice for assault years earlier. But when police searched for him, they discovered Leonard Vale died in 2011. Official cause of death: suicide. His abandoned property sat outside Hollow Creek untouched ever since. Pierce led the search personally. The house stood isolated deep in the woods. Broken windows, collapsed fences, nature slowly swallowing everything around it. Inside smelled of mold and gasoline. Officers searched room after room, finding almost nothing useful, until one detective forced open a locked basement door. Rows of VHS tapes filled metal shelves underground, dozens of them, each labeled carefully with dates. Some labels carried children's names, others showed only numbers. Then Pierce found one tape separated from the others. Written across it in faded black marker: Emily. The room fell silent instantly. They carried the tape upstairs carefully. Nobody wanted to play it, but they had no choice. The old television crackled with static before the image appeared. A dim underground room filled the screen. Then Emily appeared, much younger, maybe 9 years old. Sitting alone beneath a hanging light, she stared directly into the camera without blinking. A man's voice spoke from behind it, calm, controlled. Tell them what happens when children disobey. Emily lowered her eyes slowly. Then she whispered something that made every officer freeze. He takes them below. The tape ended immediately afterward, but before the screen turned black completely, another figure moved briefly behind Emily in the darkness. A child, watching silently from the corner, still alive. The moment the tape ended, nobody in the room moved. The silence felt heavier than anything before it. Detective Alan Pierce rewound it immediately. He played it again and again, each time hoping the second child in the corner was just a shadow. But it wasn't. It was real, alive, and watching. Pierce ordered the basement at Leonard Vale's property sealed instantly. Forensic teams moved in overnight. Every VHS tape was collected and catalogued. Over 47 recordings were recovered in total, but only a few were intact enough to view. What they revealed changed everything. Each tape showed a similar pattern. Children taken into underground spaces, rooms built beneath different locations over years, and the same symbol appearing again and again. Circle, 3 lines, always present, always watching. But the most disturbing discovery was consistency. The same man appeared in nearly every recording, never fully visible, always just outside frame, directing, observing, controlling. Pierce began to believe Leonard Vale was not acting alone. He was part of something structured, something organized, something that had existed long before Emily disappeared. Back at the hospital, Emily's condition suddenly changed. For days she had refused to speak. Then, without warning, she asked for Detective Pierce directly. When he arrived, she was sitting upright on the bed, staring at the wall. Not shaking, not afraid, just exhausted. Emily spoke for the first time in days. "Those tapes, they are not all from him." Pierce leaned forward immediately. "What do you mean?" Emily hesitated. Then she said something that made his stomach drop. There were more houses, more rooms, more children. This was not one location. It was a network. Pierce asked her to explain further. Emily slowly raised her hand and drew something on the hospital window with her finger. A rough map, Hollow Creek in the center. Then lines stretching outward, each ending in a small circle, she whispered. Before Pierce could respond, alarms suddenly rang across the hospital corridor. Security cameras went dark one by one. Power fluctuated. Emergency lights activated automatically. Outside the building, patients began screaming. Pierce rushed into the hallway. A nurse was shouting something about the back entrance. A black van had been seen again, but this time it did not leave. It stayed parked, engine running, doors open. Then all communication systems inside the hospital failed completely. Radios, phones, even emergency lines. Dead silence across every channel. Pierce returned to Emily's room immediately, but the room was empty. The window was open, rain was blowing inside, and on the bed, a small folded piece of paper remained. Pierce opened it slowly. Inside was a single sentence written in Emily's handwriting. "You were never meant to find me," and beneath it, the symbol again, circle, 3 lines, only this time, it was drawn in fresh blood. The hospital went into full lockdown within seconds. Doors sealed automatically. Emergency lights flashed through every corridor. Security guards rushed between floors in panic, but Emily Carter was already gone. Detective Alan Pierce stood frozen in the empty room, staring at the blood-marked symbol on the paper. For the first time in years, he felt something close to fear he couldn't control. Outside, the black van remained parked exactly where it had been seen. Engine still running, no driver visible, no movement inside, just darkness behind tinted glass. Pierce ordered units to surround it immediately. Officers approached slowly with weapons drawn. Rain poured heavily, washing the ground into mud again. But as they got closer, the van door was already open, completely empty. No keys, no driver, no sign of forced exit. It was as if whoever had been inside simply vanished into the storm. Back inside the hospital, surveillance footage was reviewed frame by frame. What they discovered made no sense at all. Emily had walked out of her room calmly, not running, not forced, just walking down the corridor as if she was following someone. But the hallway footage showed no one in front of her, no visible person. Yet Emily's eyes were focused on something directly ahead, something the cameras could not capture. Then she turned left toward the service exit and disappeared. Pierce replayed that section repeatedly, each time hoping for a mistake, each time finding none. Meanwhile, search teams spread across Hollow Creek again. Roadblocks were set up on every exit. Helicopters scanned the forest with thermal imaging. But Emily was gone without trace, just like 10 years ago. Except this time, she had left willingly. That detail changed everything. Back at Leonard Vale's property, forensic teams made another discovery in the basement. Behind a false wall, they found a narrow tunnel system. Fresh footprints led deeper inside. This tunnel was still being used. Pierce joined the search personally despite objections. The tunnel stretched far beneath the forest, hand-dug in sections, reinforced in others, like someone had been maintaining it for years. Eventually, the tunnel split into multiple directions, each path marked with faint paint symbols. Circle, 3 lines. Pierce chose the central path. The air grew colder as they advanced. The walls became smoother, more structured. Not a natural cave anymore, a facility. Then they heard something ahead, a faint sound, a child's voice humming. Pierce signaled the team to stop. He moved forward alone. The tunnel opened into a large underground chamber. Lights flickered overhead, powered by a generator somewhere deeper inside, and in the center of the room, Emily Carter stood quietly. Not restrained, not injured, just standing, but she was not alone. Other children were there too, sitting in silence along the walls, watching, waiting, some of them older now, some younger. Emily turned slowly toward Pierce, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke softly. "You shouldn't have come down here." Behind her, footsteps echoed from deeper inside the chamber. Slow, deliberate, controlled. A man's voice followed immediately after, calm, familiar, and completely certain. Now he knows. Pierce raised his weapon instantly toward the darkness. But Emily stepped forward and stopped him, shaking her head. For the first time, she looked at him like she was protecting him, not herself. And from the shadows, a tall figure began to emerge. The figure stepped out of the darkness slowly, not rushed, not afraid, completely in control. A man in his late 50s, clean appearance, calm eyes, the kind of face people would trust without thinking. Detective Alan Pierce tightened his grip on his weapon, but the man didn't react. He looked around the underground chamber like it was familiar, like home. Emily stood between them, motionless. Her voice broke the silence again. "Don't shoot him." Pierce didn't lower his weapon. "Who is he?" The man smiled faintly before Emily could answer. "You've been looking for me a long time, Detective." Pierce felt something shift in his memory, the voice. It wasn't unfamiliar. He had heard it before. Emily's eyes dropped to the ground, as if she couldn't watch what came next. The man slowly walked closer. "You remember the night of the carnival," he said. Pierce didn't respond. He didn't need to. The memory was already rising. The black van, the forest road, the moment he chose not to report it. The man continued softly. "I didn't take her that night." Pierce frowned. The man nodded toward Emily. "She came to us." Silence spread through the chamber. One of the children in the corner began crying quietly. The man knelt slightly, speaking like he was explaining something simple. "Not all children are taken, Detective. Some are chosen." Pierce finally spoke. "You're lying." The man didn't react. Instead, he pointed toward the tunnel behind him. "Ask her where she went the first night." Emily's breathing changed immediately, faster, unsteady. Pierce looked at her. "Emily, what is he talking about?" She didn't answer. The man stepped closer again. "Tell him about the first room." Pierce turned sharply. "What room?" Emily finally spoke, but barely above a whisper. "I wasn't alone." Pierce froze. The man continued. "There are rules in places like this. Order, structure, survival. This isn't random. This is maintained." Pierce raised his voice. "Maintained by who?" The man smiled again. "By people who understand what the world ignores." Emily suddenly stepped forward, shaking her head violently. "No." Her voice cracked. For the first time, it carried emotion, fear, anger, memory. "You said they wouldn't leave me there forever." The chamber went silent again. Pierce looked between them, realizing something was wrong with both versions of the story. The man was not just a kidnapper. Emily was not just a victim. This was something structured, something ongoing, something organized far beyond one person. Then a sudden sound echoed from the tunnel behind them. Footsteps, many of them, fast, approaching. The man didn't look surprised. He simply stepped back into the darkness and said one final sentence. "Now you've seen it, Detective. You can't unsee it." Before Pierce could react, armed figures entered the chamber from multiple directions. Not police uniforms, not known agencies. No identification, just black gear and silent coordination. Emily immediately turned toward Pierce. "Run!" Pierce didn't move. The lights flickered harder. The children along the walls stood up at the same time, like they were following a signal. And then, everything in the chamber shifted into chaos. The underground chamber erupted into confusion. The unknown armed figures moved with precise coordination, not running, not shouting, just controlling the space. Every exit point was blocked within seconds. Detective Alan Pierce realized immediately this was not a police operation. These people knew the tunnel system too well, better than his team. Emily grabbed Pierce's arm hard, forcing him toward a narrow side passage. "Now," she whispered urgently. Pierce hesitated only for a second before following her. Behind them, the children began moving together, not panicking, not resisting, just following silent instructions, like they had done this before. The man from earlier did not chase them. He simply watched from the center of the chamber, calm, unbothered, almost satisfied. Pierce and Emily ran through the narrow tunnel. Their footsteps echoed loudly in the damp stone walls. Behind them, faint voices started to spread through the darkness. Not screams, Commands, coordinated calls. They're moving west passage, seal north exit. Pierce's mind struggled to process it. This was not a single location. It was a system, a mapped structure beneath Hollow Creek, and it was actively being controlled in real time. Emily stopped suddenly at a junction. She pressed her hand against the wall, then pushed a hidden panel inward. A small emergency door opened. She pulled Pierce inside quickly. They found themselves in a maintenance corridor with older infrastructure, different construction, older than the tunnels behind them. Emily leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Pierce looked at her closely. "Emily, who are they?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked down the corridor as if listening. Then she said quietly, "They are not all the same." Pierce frowned. "What does that mean?" Emily stepped closer, voice shaking. "There are layers. Some take, some watch, some build." Pierce tried to stay focused. "Build what?" Emily didn't answer that question. Instead, she grabbed his hand and started moving again. They reached a rusted ladder, leading upward. Emily climbed first. Pierce followed. Above them was another hidden exit. It opened into an abandoned utility building near the forest edge. Rain still fell outside. Night had not ended. They were back above ground, but not safe. Not even close. Pierce stepped out carefully, scanning the area. The forest around them was silent again. Too silent. Emily stood beside him, looking in multiple directions, like she expected something to appear at any moment. Then Pierce noticed it. Small cameras hidden in the trees, barely visible, covering every angle of the clearing. Emily saw his reaction and whispered, "They never stopped watching." Before Pierce could respond, a distant radio crackled from his pocket. It was one of his officers. Voice distorted, panic rising. "Detective Pierce, we've lost contact with the underground team." Then static, then silence. Emily suddenly grabbed his arm again. "Harder this time. We need to move." Pierce looked at her. "Where?" Emily pointed deeper into the forest, toward the old carnival grounds. Pierce shook his head. "That place has been closed for years." Emily's voice dropped. "That's where it started." Before he could question further, headlights appeared between the trees behind them. Multiple vehicles. Approaching fast, not police. Black vans, at least 3. Emily's expression changed instantly. Not fear this time, recognition, and something worse, acceptance. "They found us again," she whispered. Pierce raised his weapon slowly, but Emily placed her hand over it. "No, they want me alive." The van stopped at the edge of the clearing. Doors opened simultaneously. Figures stepped out into the rain, and the same symbol was visible on their clothing. Circle. 3 lines. Pierce finally understood. This was not just a kidnapping case. It was a system that never ended. And Emily was still part of it. The rain fell harder as the figures stepped out of the vans. No one spoke, no rush. Just controlled movement through the forest, like they already knew every outcome. Detective Alan Pierce raised his weapon again. But Emily didn't move this time. She was watching them like she had been waiting for this moment. One of the figures stepped forward. A woman this time. Same symbol on her sleeve. Circle. 3 lines. She spoke calmly. "Emily, it's time." Pierce turned sharply toward Emily. "Time for what?" Emily didn't answer him. Her eyes stayed fixed on the woman, the same way a soldier recognizes an order they cannot refuse. Then Emily whispered something that made Pierce's stomach drop. "I told you not to come here." Pierce shook his head. "You're coming with me, right now." But Emily didn't look at him anymore. She looked at the forest, at the vans, at the system surrounding them, and then she said quietly, "I was never supposed to leave." The woman stepped closer. "No one leaves completely." Pierce moved between them, back away from her. The woman didn't react. Instead, she nodded slightly to the trees, and the forest responded. More figures appeared between the trunks. Dozens, maybe more, surrounding the clearing without sound. Pierce realized they were already trapped before the vans even arrived. Emily finally turned to him. For the first time since her return, her voice sounded tired. Not scared, just exhausted. "You don't understand what this is," Pierce replied immediately. "Then explain it." Emily hesitated. Then she stepped closer to him. "They don't just take children, they place them." Pierce frowned. "Place them where?" Emily looked down at the ground, then said the word slowly. "In different parts of the system." Pierce's mind struggled to connect it. System of what? Emily looked up, and for the first time there was anger in her eyes. A system that doesn't end when one part is exposed. Before Pierce could respond, the woman in the clearing spoke again. "Bring her in." Immediately, movement began around them. Not chaotic, coordinated, professional. Pierce fired one warning shot into the air. No reaction. The figures continued closing in. Emily suddenly grabbed Pierce's arm tightly and whispered fast, "Listen to me. If I don't go back, they will erase everything." Pierce shook his head. "I'm not letting you go back." Emily's voice cracked slightly. "You already saw too much." That's when Pierce noticed something strange. None of the surrounding figures were aiming at him. Not once. Their focus was entirely on Emily. Not him. Not the officers lost underground. Just her. Pierce finally realized the truth. "You're not the victim anymore, are you?" Emily didn't answer, but her silence was enough. The woman stepped closer again. Final warning. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, like accepting something heavy. Then she looked at Pierce and said one last thing. "Don't follow me deeper." Before Pierce could stop her, Emily stepped forward on her own, walking directly toward the vans. No resistance, no struggle, just surrender. Pierce shouted her name, but she didn't turn back. The figures surrounded her immediately, but gently, not dragging, not forcing, guiding, like she was still part of them, like she had always been. One of the van's doors closed, and Emily was gone again, this time without a fight, without a trace. The forest fell silent after the engines faded away. Pierce stood alone in the rain, weapons lowered, mind collapsing under everything he had just seen. Then his radio crackled again, but this time it wasn't his officer. A new voice, calm, familiar, and impossible. "Detective Pierce." Pierce froze. The voice continued. "You finally reached the middle layer," Pierce whispered into the radio. "Who is this?" A pause, then the answer came. "You already met me." The line went dead, and far behind him in the forest, a single camera light blinked on. The blinking camera light in the forest stayed on for exactly 7 seconds. Then it went dark again. Detective Alan Pierce didn't move. He stood in the rain, listening to the silence that followed Emily's departure. Not even the wind sounded normal anymore. Every part of Hollow Creek felt watched. Pierce raised his radio again, trying to reconnect with his lost units underground. Only static responded. No voices, no coordinates, nothing. He was completely cut off. Then another message came through, this time through an unsecured channel. Not official, not encrypted, just open transmission. The same calm voice returned. "You're standing at the edge now." Pierce tightened his grip on the radio. "Bring her back." A short pause followed. Then the voice answered, "You don't bring her anywhere. She returns where she belongs." Pierce stepped forward into the forest. "Emily is not part of your system." The voice didn't react emotionally. It remained flat, correcting him. "She has always been part of it." Pierce stopped walking. For the first time, doubt crept into his thoughts. Not about Emily's kidnapping, but about everything before it. The voice continued. "You saw the surface version. That was intentional," Pierce whispered. "Who are you?" Another pause, longer this time. Then the answer came. "We maintain what others forget." Before Pierce could respond, another sound came from behind him. A vehicle engine. He turned quickly. One of the black vans had returned, but it wasn't empty this time. The side door opened slowly, and a man stepped out. Not armed, not masked. Same calm posture as before. The same man from underground. The one Emily reacted to with fear and recognition. He walked through the rain toward Pierce like nothing had changed. "You're still trying to solve a closed system," he said softly. Pierce raised his weapon again. "Stop right there." The man obeyed immediately, but he didn't look threatened, only patient. "You think Emily was taken from her life," he said. Pierce's voice sharpened. "She was kidnapped." The man nodded slowly. "Yes," then added, "and placed." Pierce didn't lower his weapon. "Placed where?" The man looked toward the forest behind Pierce. "At the point where she could be observed." Pierce felt anger rising. "You're talking about children-like experiments." The man didn't deny it. He only corrected him again. "Structure." Pierce stepped forward. "You destroyed families." The man's expression stayed calm. "Families adapt." That sentence hit harder than Pierce expected, because for a moment, he remembered Sarah Carter, waiting 10 years for answers that never came. The man continued. "Emily's case was never isolated." Pierce's grip tightened. "Then why her?" The man finally met his eyes directly. "Because she remembered too much." A long silence followed, rain falling between them like static in the air. Then the man spoke again. "She wasn't supposed to return." Pierce froze slightly. "What did you do to her?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced toward the forest cameras. They already started watching again. Pierce looked around instinctively. More blinking lights appeared between the trees, one by one, turning on, like a network activating. The man stepped back toward the van. You can still walk away from this. Pierce shook his head. I'm not walking away. The man paused, then said something quieter. Then you'll reach the origin layer. Before Pierce could react, the van doors closed. The engine started instantly, and the vehicle disappeared into the forest again without headlights, just like it had never been there. Pierce stood alone once more, but now the silence felt different. He wasn't at the end of the search anymore. He was being guided deeper into it, and somewhere far beyond the forest. Emily Carter sat inside another underground room, watching a screen showing everything Pierce had just seen. And for the first time, she whispered to herself, "He's almost there." Emily's voice was barely a whisper inside the underground room, but the system heard it. Screens around her flickered in response. Live feeds from Hollow Creek, the forest, and every hidden camera network connected to the tunnels. Everything was still active. Everything was still watching. Detective Alan Pierce stood alone in the forest, unaware that he was now inside a mapped surveillance grid. Every movement he made triggered silent updates somewhere underground. He finally lowered his weapon, not because he trusted anyone, but because he understood something worse was happening. He was not being attacked. He was being guided. A small device on his radio suddenly activated again. The same calm voice returned. "Proceed to the rail access point." Pierce looked around slowly. "No." A pause, then the voice replied. "You already are." Pierce turned and realized a narrow path he had not seen before was now visible between the trees. As if it had always been there, he followed it cautiously. Every step felt monitored. After several minutes, he reached an abandoned railway entrance sealed with old metal gates. The symbol was carved into the gate. Circle, 3 lines, fresh, not old, recent. The gates opened automatically as he approached. Inside was a descending tunnel leading deeper than anything he had seen before. He hesitated, then stepped inside. Far below him, Emily watched his descent on a live feed. Another figure stood behind her now, the same calm man. He spoke without looking at the screen. He made it past the surface layer. Emily didn't respond immediately. Then she asked quietly, "What happens when he reaches the origin?" The man's answer was simple. "Then he understands there was never a disappearance." Pierce continued walking deeper into the tunnel system. The air became colder, more structured, too organized for something natural. This was not just underground construction. It was designed, layered, maintained, like a hidden city beneath Hollow Creek. Eventually, he reached a large chamber filled with control systems. Monitors lined the walls, dozens of them, each showing different towns, different forests, different missing persons cases, all connected, all active. Pierce stepped forward slowly, and then he saw something that stopped him completely. A central screen showing live footage of Sarah Carter at home. Still waiting, still hoping, still unaware she was being watched. Another screen showed Mason Carter driving home, tracked in real time. Pierce's breathing tightened. Then a final screen turned on. Emily appeared again, standing in a clean, bright room, no longer injured, no longer frightened, just calm, watching him directly through the camera, and she spoke, "You're inside it now." Pierce shook his head slightly. "This isn't real." Emily didn't react. "It has always been real." Behind her, the calm man appeared once more. He looked at Pierce through the screen and said softly, "Now you see the full structure," Pierce whispered. "What is this place?" Emily answered this time, not with fear, not with confusion, but with certainty. "It's where missing things are organized." Pierce stepped back slowly, realizing the truth was far larger than any case file, any witness, any investigation. This was not a single crime, not even a series of crimes. It was a system designed to continue without interruption, and he had walked directly into its center. The final screen flickered once more. The symbol filled the entire display. Circle, 3 lines, and beneath it one final message appeared. Observer confirmed. Pierce stood still in the glowing chamber, finally understanding the worst part. Emily had not returned by escaping the system. She had returned because the system allowed it, and now he had been brought inside it too.